Thursday, God, the day that we have never seen before. God, we ask you right now, God, to move in this place like you never moved before. God, as today is the last day of this budget, God, we ask you, God, to have thy own way, God. We decree and we declare blessings upon the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Father, in the name of Jesus, move on this country, God, like you never moved before. Spirit of the living God, fall fresh upon us right now. Touch every heart, every soul. From the speaker pulpit to the government to the opposition, touch right now. Deliver, God. Set free. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen and amen. Children, thou was taught us to say, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. I want to say, be real. Real people do real things. In the name of the Father, in the name of the Son, in the name of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Good morning, honorable members. Before we resume debate, I would like to oblige the honorable member from Central Grand Bahama with something that he would like to amend on the House records. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Central Grand Bahama.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and good morning to my colleagues. Madam Speaker, I want to correct the matter that I laid on the floor of the House last week, and I believe as honorable members, whenever we make a statement that needs to be clarified or adjusted, we should do it in this honorable House. Last week, during the presentation by the member for Freetown and the Minister of National Security, when he mentioned the items on the Neighborhood Crime Watch, he allowed me to intervene, and thank you very much, Freetown, for allowing me to intervene. And I advised the House that there were several rapes in Central Grand Bahama, in particular in the area of South Bohemia. Upon arriving in Freeport, I was admonished by a senior police officer that, yes, there were rapes in Central Grand Bahama, however, not in the South Bohemia area, but more in the Bahama Terrace area, near Tynes Beach. So I want to go on record as correcting that statement that there were rapes in Central Grand Bahama. 3 victims, I was advised, and I was also advised that the word rape is a bit brutal, so they call it sexual assault. But in my view, the victims thought it was brutal, and I would want to call it rape from my perspective. And while I also do not advocate anyone being assaulted in any kind of way, Madam Speaker, based on the speech by our Deputy Prime Minister yesterday, I would advise the House that one of those victims was a visitor from Italy, and a 22-year-old visitor from Italy, and that is very, very. It's a matter that is very disturbing, and like the member said, 65% of our income comes from our visitors, and one of the things that he did yesterday was that we also have to be responsible in this place. When we bring documents to this House, we have to lay on the table. And the member from Ragged Island and Exumas, he had a document in his hand yesterday that was not laid on the table that we should all have access to. So he gave $101 yesterday, and as a member, I believe all of us should have access to our $101, and not as a counterfeit, but a real money, because we don't want to go to jail for counterfeit. But I believe he should be asked to bring the document up, and we should all equally share. But on a serious note, I want to advise all of our constituents to be vigilant not vigilantes as they go about their daily affairs. So once again, thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for allowing me to make that correction. And thank you, Freedown, for allowing me to intervene during your contribution. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Marco City, I understand that you would like to lay some documents.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to lay, as promised yesterday, all of the documents that I mentioned. Chief among them is the public-private partnership policy that was written and to be published. The letter that we sent requesting information with respect to the Procurement Act, and the various articles documenting comments made in the House about the sensitive matters that we referred to. And each of the items that we mentioned concerning various ministries, all of the documents are here, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Order that the documents be brought up. Order that the documents do lie on the table. Thank you, Honourable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for West Granbaham and Dimini.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, with the concurrence of the side opposite, and so I've spoken with the Leader of the Opposition, we have agreed to allow for several documents to be laid on the table at this time.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Caroline Rumkey and San Salvador.
Thank you very much, and I thank the opposition for consenting for us going back on the agenda. Madam Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table a copy, the Value Added Tax Amendment Number 2 Regulations 2022.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Order that the document be brought up.
This one, 16. I further beg leave to lay on the table
Order that the document do lie on the table.
I further beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the Customs Management Amendment Number 2 Regulations 2022.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Continue, Honourable Member.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to read for the first time a bill for an act to amend the Automatic Exchange of Financial Account Information Act 2022.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Order that the document be brought up. Okay. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Honourable Member.
Yeah. What's this one?
It's been moved and seconded that the following document, bill be read for the first time and tabled. All those Automatic Exchange of Financial Account Information Amendment Bill 2022. All those in favor shall remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Order that the bill be read a first time.
A bill for an act to amend the Automatic Exchange of Financial Account Information Act.
Thank you. For the first reading,
Speaker.
the Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Exuma and Ragged Island.
Speaker, I beg leave to table a copy of the following movement. No? Not just bills? Okay, all right.
The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Elizabeth.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following: the Road Traffic Identification Plates Fees Amendment Number 2, Order 2022.
Is there a seconder? Seconded. Thank you, Honourable Member. Order that the document be brought up. Thank you. Order the document to lie on the table. Further laying of documents. The chair recognizes the honourable member for Exum and Ragged Island.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to lay a copy of the Gaming Amendment Bill 2022. Second.
Thank you, honourable member. Order the document be brought up. Thank you. Order the document to lie on the table.
No, you have to order the bill be read.
Order this is bill?
Yeah.
Okay.
The gaming regulation.
It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read a first time and tabled. The Gaming Amendment Bill 2022. All those in favor shall remain seated. Those opposed will stand. It is agreed. Order that the bill be read for a first time.
The gaming amendment regulation bill. Hold on a second.
Thank you, Honourable. Further laying of documents?
No further laying. Madam Speaker, thank you very much. We can revert to the debate. Jomo. We'll start now. No, he doesn't have it. She can go. No.
We go back?
Yes, ma'am.
We will now return to the present agenda of the House. The chair recognizes the honourable member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, you know, Cat Island's justifiable renown, Rake and Scrape Festival returned over Labor Day weekend. And let me tell you, it was glorious, wasn't it, Marco City? And perhaps it was my imagination, but it seemed like smiles of my fellow Cat Islanders and all the visitors there on that park were even, their smiles were even bigger than in years past. In fact, we had the leader of the opposition dancing the heels and toe.
Hope he wasn't campaigning.
You know, making music, coming together, dancing. Nobody does it better than Bahamians. So the years.
Nobody does better than Cat Islanders.
I'm being reminded, and I see Marcos is looking at me, I think he'll agree, than Cat Islanders. So the years when everything fell silent, I prefer to put it that way, everything fell silent. It hurt us all. Our country's festivals and regattas provide a special opportunity to celebrate our culture and boost the economy of our islands. Holding our festivals and regattas, once again, these changes mean we are on the move. We are finally making progress. We are finally moving forward. And that's what this budget is about, the way forward. Madam Speaker, it is with both humility and gratitude that I represent the magnificent people of Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador. And what I owe them, what each of us owes our constituents, is a budget that lays the strongest possible foundation for new solutions and abundant progress. This is a budget that delivers that foundation for change and renewal. You know, it wasn't too long ago that many Bahamians were certain that the prior government was getting ready to raise their taxes once again. It was doom and gloom everywhere you went. It felt like the sky was falling. What a difference a day makes. Now we are finally moving in the right direction. Now, don't get me wrong. Times are still very tough. Many Bahamians are back to work, but we have a lot more yet to do to make sure that everyone who wants to work can work. One of my guiding principles, one of my core beliefs, is that every Bahamian deserves to live a life of dignity and purpose. We know what we need to do to make that aspiration real. We need to create more opportunities, empower more people, and we need to make sure people are educated and trained to take advantage of those opportunities. We need to strengthen tourism and at the same time grow and diversify our economy. We need to create stronger ladders to success. We need more Bahamians to participate in our economy as owners. We need to mentor and hold up our young people. And not just our young people. One of the most inspiring developments over the very tough last few years was the number of Bahamians of all ages who started new small businesses during the pandemic, taking lemons and making lemonade. Our people are making the most of their talents. You know, they say leaders inspire the people, but I think about it the other way around. The talent and tenacity of the Bahamian people are an enduring source of inspiration to me. So perhaps the most important thing I can convey to the Bahamian people today is that we understand what you're going through. We see the obstacles in your path, and we are determined to help you knock them down so that you can reach your full potential. We will measure our success by measuring the impact we have on our people. The truth is, Madam Speaker, when you focus on empowering people, everything else falls into place. A growing economy, fiscal stability, and social change. These are achieved by prioritizing people-driven policies. That is why this budget was built on 3 pillars: providing relief, generating opportunity, and increasing security. Bahamians need relief so they can make ends meet. Lower prices at the cash register, increased wages for public servants, and increased social assistance are all major priorities in this budget. People cannot fulfill their potential if they cannot afford the basics. The impact of global inflation crisis must be addressed if we want people and our country to move forward. In respect to opportunity, we are empowering local entrepreneurs, diversifying the economy, and generating investments in key areas for future growth, laying the groundwork for a stronger, more inclusive economy. Building a more prosperous nation, lifting people up, these can only be done with new solutions. This budget includes new policies to move our country past merely talking about the orange, green, and blue and green economies. It's time to realize their promise. This budget also has a special emphasis on enabling home ownership with a variety of new policies that put the dream of home ownership within the reach of more Bahamians. Madam Speaker, these policies are the best way to ensure young Bahamians continue to build their lives and grow their families here at home. And security. Of course, security must be prioritized alongside relief and opportunity, because when our neighborhoods are not safe, when our children are not safe, how can our communities and our people flourish? This budget is making increasing security a priority, with new funding for increasing community policing, increasing the operational capacity of the police force, and attacking the root cause of crime. Madam Speaker, as the Bahamian people are all well aware, we face enormous challenges as a country. I welcome thoughtful debates about how best to confront these challenges. But partisan attacks, not made in good faith, well, Madam Speaker, I won't waste too much of your time or mine on those. But let me say, lectures about fiscal responsibility from folks who routinely fail to meet their own revenue projections, who borrowed over $3 billion with little to show for it, who spent $20 million on sidewalks during a pandemic when people were struggling to survive. The same people who poured $200 million of taxpayers' money into the Grand Lucayan and then failed to land a good deal for the hotel, taking lectures from the authors of those fiascos. That doesn't make too much sense to me.
No, it doesn't.
Similarly, how is it that the same crew who failed to close a single significant new investment during their entire term in office made no meaningful attempts to diversify our economy, somehow now imagine themselves experts on economic growth? Their plan for economic growth was to raise VAT by 60%. And we all know how that turned out.
Lazy way out.
And how should we respond when they pontificate about transparency, when they kept so many key details of their pandemic spending secret, hiding behind the endless renewed emergency orders? Finally, I must confess that when they have the temerity to speak on the issue of governance, all I can think about is what that deal you call Obandi. You remember the one? With no environmental impact statement, sketchy individuals, and fake signatures? What to make of complaints about my government's travel when they come from people who, we found out yesterday, spent all that money
On the bed and the mirror.
It makes one wonder how many other residents had special budgets. And you know what's so interesting? The former Minister of Foreign Affairs didn't know anything about it.
No, nothing.
No SPS.
And yes, these are the same people who gave their people membership in airline lounges and new travel allowances for spouses. Madam Speaker, I don't understand. I don't understand. In many ways, you know, Madam Speaker, most who know me will know that I'm a patient man.
Yes.
But I have my limits too.
That's right.
My colleagues opposite, well, sometimes it seems that they just talk and they hear themselves. Talk and hear themselves talk. There isn't any coherence to their arguments. Sometimes nearly within the same breath, if you listen, they accuse of us spending too little and then spending too much. What is it? What is it? You know, making noise. Making noise ain't the same thing as making sense. So let me just clear up a few points. First, let's cast our memories back, painfully, but thankfully briefly, to the time our country was reeling from one lockdown after another, some of which were announced with no warning. An extraordinary and unprecedented number of Bahamians could not work.
No warning.
Social services therefore had to support a record number of Bahamian families. Remember that?
Yeah.
Madam Speaker, it makes no sense to compare those dark lockdown days to today,
That's right.
when the economy is growing and a new day is dawning.
You got whole bottle over there. You got 5 more minutes. Can you
Yeah.
start from the beginning?
You know, but sense must be in short supply. And it's time like this that I understand why the old people will say they don't know why they call it common sense, because it ain't common.
Comment. Sure ain't.
Some are wondering why the allocation for social services in the coming fiscal year is less than it was during the height of the pandemic. When, as I said, record number of Bahamians were, needed help. Yes. Yes. We are spending less compared to a time when some 45% of Bahamians were out of work. But we are spending more, much more, 50% more than the prior government spent during 2019. That's the last pre-COVID year. In recognition that times are still very difficult, that's why we're doing it, and that the global inflation crisis is having an enormous impact on Bahamians. So when you criticize to reduce some allocated in social services because it is less than what you spent during the pandemic period, how does that make sense?
None.
When the economy is now growing, right? When it was 45% unemployment, now it's down to under 20%. What do you expect us to do? Well, what we did, if you want to compare something, what you should have compared that number with, what we are spending now, what we allocated now for this fiscal year, will go back to your pre-COVID-19 allocation. And you see what you allocated then, and see what we allocate now.
Increase. It's an increase.
That's a proper comparison. That would be apple and apple. Because you wouldn't have the pandemic. You will have the 45% high unemployment. And see what we did. We are doing 50% more than you did then.
That's right.
Just look at that.
You gotta read this speech twice.
And that is in recognition of the fact, as I've said, people are still struggling. We still have the inflationary pressures to contend with. That's the kind of thoughtfulness that a compassionate and understanding government will do. So you should be talking about that. And understand what you are comparing when you speak to those things. See, as more Bahamians get back to work, and more Bahamians and more business owners launch their enterprises, of course, social assistance won't match record highs. This is a sure sign. This is a sure sign that things are improving. However, we are still determined. That's why when we looked at 2019, we now appreciate what's going on in our economy today. We decided to do 50% more than what you did in 2019 because we are still determined to provide a strong safety net and lift living standards. You know, and they know this. They understand this, but still they tediously insist on playing politics.
Yes, that's what it is.
It makes no sense.
Stop it.
Madam Speaker, it is my intention not only to make sure social services has the resources needed to help families, but to make sure we see much needed reform in that agency as well. It's important that families who really need help are able to get it. The RISE pilot program, for example, showed us that conditional cash transfers, providing cash payments to families who meet certain conditions tied to education and health, can be a success. Research shows that conditional cash transfer programs have been successful in many, many countries. Despite this, RISE was stopped, reviewed, and canceled by the prior administration. Now, you have that article, right?
Yes.
Just in case they.
I have a few
So just keep it there in case. Yeah. So that was.
I'll share it.
So the previous administration, they stopped, reviewed, and canceled the RISE program. That was a mistake, and we're starting it once again. We learned from the pilot program how to make it successful in our Bahamian context. In our Bahamian context, the goal is not only to offer relief now, but to put families who participate in a better position to succeed. It's also a program that is designed to break the cycle of poverty.
Yes.
That's why the conditions are tied to health, education, right? So that when you train and you try to break the cycle of poverty. A truly rich politics. What's the point of order? Madam Speaker, I have said nothing. I have what?
I'm asking for a point of order. I can litigate that after. There's a point of order.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Marco City.
Madam Speaker, since all the articles are present, I believe that the Prime Minister is misleading the public by making the assertion that the RISE program was canceled by the former administration. I said when I stood last time, the advice that I received is the following, and I would like to then hear. I would then like to hear not the selective pieces that were read by the member for West End and Bimini that refutes that, but I'd love to hear the more extensive parts. So the program, Madam Speaker, was a pilot project, and the period of the pilot project came to an end. We don't have a problem. This side, under my leadership, does not have a problem with the RISE program, and I want that on the record. Madam Speaker,
Honourable member.
a point of order is if something incorrect is said, and I'm saying something incorrect was said, Madam Speaker, that is the point of order.
Honourable member.
Yes.
The IDB said you canceled it.
No, wait a minute.
Honourable member. We will get to that point today where all questions will be answered and all will be laid.
It's not a question, Madam Speaker.
And all points will be made. And I think you're clearing up something and clarifying it.
No, I'm not clarifying. I'm saying the Prime Minister made a definitive statement. The Prime Minister said we stopped the program. Yes. So I'm not seeking clarification. I'm saying the Prime Minister is wrong. The advice I received from two formers who were involved in the ministry where the program was ran, said it is incorrect. I then looked at the quotes that were given by the member for West End, and I'm saying two things. One is, we certainly don't have a problem with RISE. What we have a problem with is the assertion, the incorrect assertion that we stopped the program.
Okay.
It was a pilot project that came to an end. There was an assessment done, and it was determined not to continue. So yeah, that's fine. I'm saying, yeah. So
Members.
I criticized her tweet. She stood on her feet.
Honourable members.
Go to the hand side. She stood on her feet.
Honorable member.
Mr.
The chair.
No, we heard her.
Honorable member, you may continue.
Yes.
She criticized
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker.
Members.
Madam Speaker. I understand the leader of the opposition. You know. He finds himself in a very peculiar position where he is distancing himself from some of the things that they may have done. Right? If he wanted, he
under his leadership, he don't have a problem.
he said if he just wanted to get up and say, he said he supports the RISE program. If that's all you wanted to say, you could have said that, but don't mislead the public. My assertion that they stopped and canceled the RISE program comes from Madam Speaker, the point I make that the RISE program was stopped and cancelled by the previous administration comes from the report of the IDB Bank. That's my source. I heard from the one. Right? I didn't hear it from anyone.
You abandoned it.
I didn't hear it from anyone. I did mention pilot. If you listened, you had heard me say. You heard when I used the word pilot. You heard me say pilot.
Yeah. So I didn't hear you say pilot.
Well, you don't listen.
That's your rationale.
You don't listen.
Abandoning it.
You don't listen.
So a pilot project has a sunset clause.
You abandoned it.
So-
Stop that now. Marco City, you know that's not true.
Members?
You abandoned it. You abandoned it.
Madam Speaker, as I said, I stand by the report of the IDB Bank that upon the FM coming into office in 2017, they canceled the report. Just check the IDB report, right? Right. That's what it says, right? So they did, right?
And the honorable member, members.
Madam Speaker, during the course of this debate, we heard several speakers from the side opposite casting doubt on our revenue forecast. Right?
You're the paragon of virtue.
No, I'm not, but I
Let me say, Madam Speaker, this administration is not afraid of criticism.
Member on the floor, members.
This administration is not afraid of criticism or commentary. That is the reason why we are here today in this, and let me add the word, honorable House. Being able to engage in debate and discussion is the hallmark of a healthy democracy. Just as the members opposite gave their critiques of our forecasts, I'll reply in kind to demonstrate why I'm confident that we will be able to achieve our goals. It is a painful reality that the COVID-19 pandemic resulted in a contraction in economic conditions, both domestically and globally. However, while in opposition, we continually argued that the continuation of emergency orders and the subsequent curfews and lockdowns choked the Bahamian economy as other countries began their economic rebounds. This painful truth was proven after this administration came to office and ended the state of emergency. Almost immediately, we saw a bustling of business activity and scores of persons returned to work. Many businesses reopened and were able to engage in activity for longer hours. Scores of Bahamians were able to proudly return to work and earn a living again. We have seen the impact of the global economic rebound coupled with the elimination of emergency orders. When we compare government's revenue projections from June 2021 versus our current projected outturn, the evidence is clear. In June 2021, government revenue was forecast at $2.2 billion. The current outlook estimates government revenue for 2021-2022 is at $2.5 billion. The bulk of this was increase in revenue. The bulk of this increase in revenue relates to improved VAT collections. I don't think I need to explain for members the painful reality of the current economic climate. As a result of the global economic rebound, as the world adjusts to life with COVID-19 and the resultant supply chain constraints, global prices began to rise in 2021. In November 2021, the U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen indicated that she expected supply chain bottlenecks to recede and for inflationary pressures to decline. With this outlook in mind of a normalizing of inflationary pressures, an easing of supply chain constraints, and resumption of global travel, it is not surprising that the IMF projected an 8% increase in output for the Bahamian economy in 2022. However, Madam Speaker, most of the world was unable to predict the Russian invasion of Ukraine or the impact that it would have in extending and deepening the impact of global inflationary pressures. Almost overnight, the world saw an increase in oil prices, which naturally trickled down to the Bahamas, resulting in an increase in food, gas, and other items domestically. As a result of the revised outlook for inflation, as corroborated by the U.S. Treasury Secretary, the IMF revised its global outlook for 2022 and also reduced its estimates for output growth in the Bahamas from 8 to 6%. While this may seem very technical, the results and implications of this analysis are extremely important. The side opposite has referenced on several occasions during this debate the release of the government's fiscal strategy report and their perceived incongruity with the actual budget. As the side opposite would have been the ones who would have introduced and passed the Fiscal Responsibility Act, I find it amusing that they'll be confused with how this document relates to the budget and the estimates reported in the budget document. Similar to the side opposite, who delayed the release of the last fiscal strategy report under its administration due to the unprecedented impact of COVID-19, so too did this administration delay the release of its first fiscal strategy upon coming to office due to the immediate need to debate and pass a supplementary budget to reprioritize existing allocations. And I dare say that there was a conversation had with the side opposite with that delay. Right?
We spoke to Minister. The other leader.
The chair recognizes the honourable member.
Madam Speaker, in light of the fact that the member for Cat Island yield on this point, I wish not to make this contentious, but only to raise the point that we debated the immediate matters that you mentioned. However, we had a number of opportunities for your side to be compliant with the law, which was to bring it here. And I would remind the House that no less than the Financial Secretary said and was carried in the press that the motivation for not laying it had nothing to do with what the Prime Minister just said. He did not think it was a proper use of the Parliament's time. So it is incongruent. What the Prime Minister is representing as the reason is different from the Ministry of Finance. You did not lay it because you wish not to be compliant with the law.
Thank you, honourable member. You may continue. Honourable member.
You got one clap.
Madam Speaker, I stand by what I had to say, right? And we had to reprioritize our budget with the budget. Yeah, that's right. What's wrong with that? I'm not all knowing, you know. That's why I have a team. And I'm not the competent authority. See, see the irony of this. The irony of this, Madam Speaker, is that they were the ones who passed the fiscal responsibility, and they ought to know. And I suggest and I assert that they know all too well the purpose of this legislation and the purpose of the annually prepared fiscal strategy report. While this document outlines the government's policy priorities and provide high-level fiscal forecasts, the side opposite is quite aware that the fiscal forecasts in the annual fiscal strategy report are not binding. While the FSR does provide a high-level framework and a trajectory for government revenue and expenditure, the fiscal strategy report is not the budget. The only document that can commit government to revenue and expenditure allocations is the budget, which we are debating at this moment. The side opposite is all too aware of the process of preparing the annual fiscal strategy report and the general principles that apply. Let me remind this House and the member for East Grand Bahama that when he sat in the chair as Minister of State for Finance, the 2020 fiscal strategy report prepared under his watch experienced some of the very same challenges that he's now castigating this current administration for. While his 2020 fiscal strategy report indicated efforts to reduce subventions, this is an example, while his 2020 fiscal strategy report indicated efforts to reduce subventions to state-owned enterprises, the subsequent 2021-2022 fiscal budget actually indicated a 14.7 million increase in subventions to state-owned enterprises. Why this disconnect, Madam Speaker? Because circumstances changed between the time of the preparation of the government fiscal strategy report and preparation of the actual budget. Just look at those two documents in 2020, right? That which necessitated increased support for the OS is all.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for East Grand Bahama.
If you would yield. I appreciate it. Madam Speaker, there were just 2 points that I wish to raise. The first is the point that we were making with the inconsistency of the fiscal strategy report and the budget was that there were 2 places in the law, one in the the Financial Management Act, as well as the Fiscal Responsibility Act, that said that those 2 documents, the fiscal strategy report and the budget, should be consistent. It also specifically said that it must also be specific in terms of the targets, the fiscal objectives and the fiscal targets. The point that we were raising was that your targets in your fiscal report was inconsistent with your targets in your budget. And we were saying that as a result of that, the law indicated that the 2 had to be consistent. We also, if you allow, just the second point. To address the second point with respect to the state-owned enterprises. We also came back and said, as a result of the issues that we were facing with COVID, we had to change the fiscal strategy report and adjust it. But the difference was we came back and said, here is the justification as to why we were changing it. The point we were making was, you did your fiscal strategy report in January, and you have a budget now in June. You never came back and gave a justification as to why you're changing it. That's all.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Continue, Honourable Member.
I think what I'm pointing out to the member, I accept what he says, right? That there may be some inconsistencies. What I'm suggesting to you is that it's hypocritical for them to suggest that we ought to be slavishly bound to our fiscal strategy report because they face. No. The budget justifies why we change it. And that's the point we're making. They make a lot of hay over it.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, it's a hill that amounts to nothing, because at the end of the day, it's our budget that speaks to it. Things change. And there are a number of, I could go through their 2020, and they never amended their strategy report. They brought their budget in 2021, and it was different. We could have criticized them on that as well. Because there are a number of issues. There are a number of targets fixed in your 2020 report that it was not reflected in your budget. Circumstances changed. And in our debate in the fiscal strategy report, we said to them it was a toothless tiger. All it did was a consolidation of best practices. That's what it was. And in those circumstances, it was really a guide. That was our criticism from the day one in debate leading up to the passing of that one.
Okay. The chair recognizes the honorable member.
Incorrect to say. It is misleading to say. It is misleading to say that our fiscal strategy report of 2020, that we did not meet those targets. In fact, the target of the 2020 was the whole point of why we actually had the $800 million projected deficit, because we fit the deficit to meet that target.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Fort Charlotte.
Point of order. The honorable member ought to refer you to section 30, and it says 30 subsection 27. It says here, a member may in the following circumstances only interrupt another member who is speaking. A, to call attention to a point of order or to a matter of privilege which has suddenly arisen. Call attention to the absence of a quorum. To call attention to the presence of strangers. D, to move a closure motion. E, to elucidate some matter raised in his speech if the member speaking gives way. F, to offer an explanation of some material part of his speech which has been misunderstood. This honorable member didn't refer to his speech that was misunderstood. And G, no, the clock is stopped. To declare urgency, you're not the speaker. To declare urgency of a revenue resolution. And when we go to 35, Madam Speaker, and this is respect for the speaker, a member who rises on a point of order shall, when invited by the speaker to do so, state the infringement of these rules on which his point of order is based.
Yes.
And that was not done, Madam Speaker.
Yes.
And we all have the defense of the rules, and these interruptions, Madam Speaker, I respectfully say they're inconsistent with the rules.
Yes, honorable member. There are several rules. There are several rules that we always infringe on here, and one is under the rules of debate as well. When a member is speaking, no other member may speak or make noise or disturbance so as to interrupt him, except under these rules. You know, everybody is so guilty. But the minute I open my mouth, and here, the minute I open my mouth, I know there's several rules.
The truth of the matter is,
several rules that we always infringe on.
Madam Speaker, the truth of the matter is that the only binding aspects of the government's annual fiscal strategy is the commitment and adherence to achieving certain fiscal goals, such as debt to GDP ratio. While the current budget proposes adjustments to the nominal revenue and expenditure values proposed in the FSR, the current budget still places the Bahamas on a trajectory to reduce the debt to GDP ratio to the targets established in our fiscal strategy report as required. But I'm also sensitive to the concerns of the member for East Grand Bahama in his contribution, requesting a debate on the government's fiscal strategy report, which, as I explained, is not binding on government. If nothing else, the COVID-19 pandemic clearly demonstrated to the Bahamian populace and Bahamian businesses the need to modernize and adapt. The traditional business models that we are accustomed to, which provided predictability and stability, also prevented us from moving forward to address new challenges. All right, so, This administration, Madam Speaker, this administration, Madam Speaker, this administration.
Members.
What?
Members.
Come on.
Members.
Because I think this point is a very significant point for the entire House.
The speaker recognize you.
The chair recognizes the honorable member.
Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister indicated that the fiscal strategy report is not a binding document. That, we believe, is a very, very dangerous statement to make. The fiscal strategy report is a binding document by law, because by law it says that the budget must be consistent. Correct. And so we have a very difficult, a very serious challenge with the Prime Minister saying that the fiscal strategy report is not a binding document. That's exactly what he said. I quoted what he said. He said it is not a binding document.
The honorable member for Cat Island Rum Kings.
I will not get into.
I don't care what the tape says.
Speaker, there are.
Welcome back.
Mr. Speaker,
No. The point is, the law is the law, but the targets are not binding.
Yeah, the target.
That's the point he's making.
Yeah, point I'm
That's
making.
the point he's making.
I talk about revenue
Not binding.
it's revenue and expenditures.
It's all showboat. That's all y'all were doing. Showing off for the IMF. Don't mean nothing.
Honorable member, you may
Don't mean
continue.
nothing.
Speaker, another point was made by the side officers regarding the appointment and constitution of the government's debt management committee. This committee will include the financial secretary, the deputy financial secretary, central bank governor, or other central bank staff, the accountant general, the director for debt management, and 5 other members. This administration is convinced that we have met this standard. In fact, we went beyond what is required. We also have an independent debt management advisory committee. And for every single debt transactions, all those parties listed are all huddled around the table. The same parties are all involved in preparing offering documents. The same team is involved in deciding on a debt strategy. We have taken this process, as I said, even further to retain and include this process an independent financial advisory firm and committee to guide the process. And the Bahamas has already seen the benefits of our expanded approach. In our last 2 offerings, the repurchase agreement and our recent bond offering, both transactions allowed the Bahamas to place offerings at rates far lower than we have realized in recent times. This well-coordinated approach in our debt management practice and the planned use of all outstanding revenue arrears collected to be used to pay down our outstanding debt is at the core of our debt management strategy, as articulated in the recently released medium-term debt management strategy report. In a few days, the Minister of Economic Affairs will speak more to this government's debt management strategy in the other house. In my initial communication, Madam Speaker, I emphasized that as we laid out in our blueprint for change, small businesses will receive $50 million in funding in the coming fiscal year. Small businesses are fueled by the ingenuity of our people and are a very important engine for our economy. Yet here we are with some howling that because some of the $50 million comes from sources other than the Consolidated Fund, that the pledge to spend $50 million has not been honored. The small business owner who receives support does not care which agency writes the check, as long as he or she has the resources to move their business forward. $50 million is $50 million. This disingenuous, misleading attack is strong evidence, I think, of how little of real substance they have to offer. Is that the end of the hypocrisy? Sadly, no. Again, in nearly the same breath as acknowledging how high prices are impacting Bahamians, they complain about a $50 monthly increment to civil servants who makes less than $30,000 per annum. Come on, man. Where's your heart?
Shame.
Do you have a soul?
Wow.
We all know that this is not enough. We all know that this is not enough to make up for years of stagnant wages. But it is a first step made during our first budget with more action to follow. They criticized the salary increase, yet while they were in office, public servants did not even see an increase of $1. In fact, they put a stop to annual increments, ensuring that wages shrank relative to inflation. It brings to question their credibility and sincerity on this issue. Madam Speaker, I admit I was perhaps more surprised than I should have been when members opposite took up the cause of a foreign yacht charter owners for too many years.
That's right.
What happened? Huh?
The chair recognizes the honourable member for East Grand Bahama.
But, Madam Speaker, again, we would not wish the record to be incorrectly stated, and we would not wish for misleading statements to be left on the record. The previous government put a pause on increments. And we put a pause on increments as a result of what was taking place with COVID. Persons all over the Bahamas were losing their jobs. Government revenue was down. So there was a pause that was put on increments. The Prime Minister also said that we did not increase salaries.
Honourable members,
we did put in
May
place.
I ask the honourable members of this House, please, do not abuse the point of orders. We will have rebuttals, we will have questions, question and answer periods. There's where we will take this. He said he stopped it. He said he stopped it.
Did you give any? Yes. Yes, the financial officers want an increase.
Thank you, honourable member. You may continue, honourable member.
Yeah. Follow the advice of your leader here. Leave that.
Take the advice, though.
Madam Speaker,
That sounds like infighting.
the other surprise I had was the cause of the foreign yacht charter owners. For too many years, Madam Speaker, Bahamians have been at a disadvantage over non-Bahamians. We are moving to rectify that because we think that's wrong. Why should a foreign yacht charter owner or their guests pay less taxes than the Bahamian boat charter owners? Why?
They argue for them in here.
It's not equitable. It's not fair. And I will not endorse it.
That's right.
These are the same members, who immediately upon coming to office gave tax breaks to the rich. So I guess I shouldn't have been surprised. But they're criticizing us for yacht owners. On the feeding program, they continue to boast about a program that paid a very high salary on top of an 8% fee structure of the total sum spent to a very wealthy individual, which program had very little oversight or controls on spending. The lack of oversight means that we are still struggling to piece together crucial details amid the chaos of missing records and receipts. We have a different approach, Madam Speaker. We have a different approach to feeding people. One that recognizes the good people in our communities who lead from the streets and feed people with no expectation of money or acknowledgement. Bishop Hanchel on Wolf Road, Bishop Lawrence Road on First Street, The Grove, Bishop C.B. Moss in Baintown. We thank you all for your kindness and your generosity and your service. We believe the funds from the government will allow your already successful feeding programs to be able to expand and include more families. Our belief on the way forward is reflected in our desire to partner with existing programs. We recognize that no government has all the answers and that there are social entrepreneurs who are doing a great job in our communities. So we have increased funding for NGOs by 10% to better support programs that are making a positive difference in our communities. As I said earlier, people are our priority. That is why families will benefit from a doubling of the school uniform assistance budget. We know that every dollar saved goes a long way towards meeting daily needs. But it's not just about saving money. It's also about saving lives. The $500,000 investment in a new women's shelter will do just that. We have heard the cries of Bahamian women and concerned citizens who have said a new shelter is necessary to have a real impact on reducing violence against women. Prioritizing people also means prioritizing health. While violent crimes often dominate the headlines, it is a lack of access to healthcare resources that is silently killing many Bahamians each year. It is in the interest of providing improved healthcare throughout the Bahamas. Both Grand Bahama and New Providence will benefit from the construction of new hospitals, while clinics on the Family Islands will be completely renovated and overhauled. We are also investing $10 million into a catastrophic healthcare program, the first of its kind, to aid Bahamians with serious illnesses. It's another first step, a move in the right direction. Madam Speaker, these are quite literally life-saving initiatives, and they will be initiated during this budget cycle. There have been many good moments in recent weeks. One of the most gratifying for me was when a major food retailer moved to reduce their food prices in anticipation of reductions in customs duties, which will be implemented on the 1st of July. There were a number of them that sent out little memes to their customers, indicating how they are, because of the government's initiatives, what we did, that they're going to lower prices. A global inflation crisis means prices are growing faster than at any other point in 4 decades. People need help. Because Russia and Ukraine are both major agricultural exporters, especially of grain and fertilizers, food prices are through the roof because of disruptions caused by this war. Even before the war, Madam Speaker, prices were going up due to pandemic-related shipping woes and the rising cost of fuel. Bahamians are finding that they have to retreat from the checkout line and return items from their shopping cart. Some Bahamians, far too many, are finding it increasingly difficult to eat healthy, regular meals. Dollars don't seem to stretch as far as they used to, And this has only compounded the struggles many families were already experiencing through our archipelago. The reality is that the Bahamas already had too high a cost of living prior to the pandemic. So this wave of global inflation has hit us especially hard. This is why our budget allocates resources to specifically help Bahamians cope with the inflation crisis. We have lowered the customs duty on many items in our grocery stores: eggs, chicken, flour, cheese, corn, prepared meats, and a huge range of healthy vegetables have now had their associated custom duties decreased significantly or are completely duty-free. This budget period will also see the increased enforcement of price controls on all relevant items to protect the Bahamian consumers from unnecessarily elevated prices. We are serious about providing relief from rising prices in whatever way that we can. While no single measure represents a silver bullet or cure-all to this global inflation crisis, at a time when every dollar counts, it all adds up to real savings at the cash register for Bahamian families. Just as the pandemic highlighted long-term deficiencies and vulnerabilities in our healthcare system, the rising price of food worldwide highlights the vulnerabilities inherent in importing so much of our food. Why should we, when we have fertile land and bright entrepreneurs? We are investing $100 million into agriculture to ensure that the Bahamas takes steps towards decreasing its reliance on food imports. $1.5 million of that budget is specifically allocated toward technologies, training, and capacity building related to food security. We are also providing $500,000 in grants to farmers and an additional $1 million plus in funding to secure broilers and to support livestock farming. On our islands where farming is difficult, we are exploring the use of container farms. Duty reductions on engines and parts will help the fishing industry. We are also constructing a cultivation center to modernize training, programs, and sales so that our farmers and entrepreneurs have support and access to innovations. This is the first step in a plan, which will include adding centers on family islands, which will encompass a produce exchange, a fish and farm store, and a food processing community kitchen. And of course, we are making substantial investments in BAMSI, because investing in tomorrow's farmers and fishermen is the best way to secure a future for agriculture in the Bahamas. Our goal is to reduce food imports by 25% by 2025. This budget, which is evidence of progressive investment in agriculture, represents the first step in a longer-term plan. The framework consists of direct subsidies to encourage modernization and results-oriented business development in this field. Consecutive years of high-priority investments in the agriculture sector is the only way to increase our nation's food security. Madam Speaker, education is perhaps the most transformative investment in producing positive social and economic change over the long term. It's no secret that the Bahamas has a lot of room for improvement in educational outcomes. We cannot fail yet another generation of our children. Unfortunately, COVID-19 pandemic has made a bad situation worse. We are mobilizing resources to study the impact of learning loss during the pandemic and to formulate a plan to minimize that loss. Summer learning academies will provide intense instruction for 4-week periods so we don't waste any more time. Many of our children experience chronic problems during the years of distance learning, and it is not a concern that can be postponed for another day. Let me say this. I'm not giving up on any of them, and neither should any of you. As the member from Eglinton put it so succinctly, this is an all-hands-on-deck emergency. It's going to take a whole village, from educators to families to church communities and civil society, to make changes in education. And I adopt those remarks and thought of from it. At high school level, we're making major investments in technical and vocational training. Everything from the maritime studies to robotics to carpentry to solar energy to agriculture. I am determined for Bahamians to have skills, training that they need to take advantage of opportunities generated by a diversifying economy. We are also investing in young adults and adult training opportunities to build the employability of those who are already in the workforce. A new school for the performing arts will produce a new generation of Bahamian creatives who will benefit from the investments being made in the orange economy. Theater, film, television, architecture, design, performing arts. I know Bahamians can excel in all these areas if they have the right education and the opportunities. Education can be a great equalizer, but only if we invest in it. Madam Speaker, there are some who don't view social change interventions as worthwhile endeavors. They find the returns of such interventions too intangible. They would prefer tangible, concrete sidewalks, for example, over more difficult to measure investments in people. How else to explain the decision to spend $20 million on sidewalks while shutting down the urban renewal ban? Those who know about the ways lives are changed by participations in such bans can attest to the transformative potential of that initiative. It's about far more than music, Madam Speaker. It's about belonging. It's about discovering skills you don't know you had. It's about community and believing in each other. So I was really moved by the contribution of the member for Marathon, who was in the urban renewal program when it first started as one of its leaders. And she was able to bring at least 3 or 4 persons who she would have mentored, taught in the band from the age of 10. Doctors, immigration officers from the inner city. Those intangibles is what we have to invest in as well. So now I can tell you today the Urban Renewal Band has over 600 members. We subscribe to the belief that it's easier. We subscribe to the belief that it's easier to raise strong children than to repair broken adults. The National Guard program being launched under the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture is yet another exciting opportunity that builds our young people up while allowing them to play a critical role in national disaster responses. We also believe in comeback stories and second chances, which is why we are introducing the Second Chance program to reduce recidivism, and we are constructing a new prison complex to alleviate the issue of overcrowding, which was creating a domino effect of poor conditions that were fueling criminality. I know there are some concerns about the government investing in the prison, while there are other national priorities. The problem is that if we do not invest in rehabilitation, we will never break the cycle of violence that is plaguing our streets. A modern facility equips us with resources and environment we need to prevent our rehabilitative systems from churning out repeat offenders. National security is a priority. We are sparing no resources as we invest in social support, rehabilitation, policing, and community initiatives to address the ongoing crisis of violent crimes. Madam Speaker, creating strong social safety nets, securing our communities, providing quality health care, bolstering food security, and educating the population are the basics of good governance. Any government that is serious about national development must get these core areas right. But we are not here to simply get the basics right. We are here to empower, to facilitate big dreams, and to recapture the hope of people who can look to the future and believe that the best days of the Bahamas are still ahead of us. In our blueprint for change, we pledge to expand opportunities for ownership and economic empowerment. Already, through our housing initiatives, we are seeing the fulfillment of this promise. For many people, nothing is more emblematic of the attainment of the Bahamian dream than the day they become a homeowner. For years, Bahamians have protested the barriers that have made home ownership an impossibility for many people. This administration is committed to changing this reality. We have expanded concessions offered to first-time homeowners while increasing the level of exemption for real property tax from $250,000 to $300,000. We have significantly reduced duties on a number of building supplies, lowering construction costs. Rapid progress is being made in providing affordable homes throughout the Bahamas. There are multiple projects ongoing on the islands of Grand Bahama and Abaco. We are delivering as promised in providing housing solutions to fuel rebuilding efforts. Even the temporary dome site is now being explored as a potential location for permanent housing. Of course, New Providence also has multiple ongoing housing initiatives, and islands like Andros, Texumas, and Eleuthera are being explored for housing developments. All this activity is being initiated during our first budget cycle, Madam Speaker, and led by the energetic Member of Parliament for Elizabeth. But what is shocking about this, Madam Speaker, is that those opposite have the gall to attempt to criticize these initiatives. After not building a single home in 4.5 years, not one. That they failed to build a single home suggests to me that facilitating Bahamian ownership was not high on their list of priorities. We must now play catch up as we expedite the rollout of housing development to meet the neglected housing needs of the Bahamian people. But we are not content, Madam Speaker, but we are not content to simply build in hundreds of homes and hope people can qualify to own them. We're not content with that. This budget cycle, we'll see the launch of the government's rent-to-own initiative. So we can start striking down the barriers to home ownership.
Breaking the cycle.
Those who could qualify, they'll qualify, but there are many who can't qualify. And we have to qualify them.
Equity.
We have to qualify them.
Equity.
It reminds me of saying in the Bible, all who are called are not, you don't have to be qualified to be called. Because once you're called, we qualify you.
That's right.
And so we'll qualify those neglected, who were neglected to have access to home. We will be leveling the playing field in a real way for Bahamian families. Madam Speaker, I mentioned the rebuilding of Grand Bahama and Abaco as a high priority initiatives due to their continued struggles in the wake of Hurricane Dorian. But that is not the only reason that the people in Abaco, Grand Bahama, and across all our family islands have cause for excitement in this budget. Yes. Family islanders have long bemoaned the Nassau-centric approach that has characterized recent national development efforts. As a member of parliament representing several family islands, I know this story all too well. We are now rolling out a more balanced national development model to encourage new investments and ownership opportunities in the family islands. Yes, sir. We have put in place the Family Island Development Trust Fund to ensure that 10% of taxes collected in the family islands are used specifically for family island development. Family islanders will not have to rely solely on the consolidated fund anymore. They will have a special fund that will only be used for the benefit of family islands. We expect to see a boom in family island infrastructure development as a result. By 2025, the percentage of family island revenue dedicated solely for family island use will be increased to 35%. Wow. To 35%. This investment will effectively transform the economic landscape of family islands for long-term growth.
Equity.
I want to highlight our commitment to a transparent framework for the development and redevelopment of family islands airports. They are in desperate need for upgrade. A transparent framework through the infrastructure fund, funded in part by overflight fees, is fundamental to successful 3P airport development proposals. Madam Speaker, 2017, In 2017, the people of Grand Bahama placed their faith in the promise of the people's time. Grand Bahama had 5 representatives in this House. To be fair, one of them, the then member for Pine Ridge, fell out with his colleagues almost immediately. His farewell speech in this House, where he lambasted his own government with poetry and prose, and almost a song, rang out around the country. But as for the rest of them, what did they do? Well, I was going to say nothing, but then I remembered they opened the Fishing Hole Road project, which we started, and they opened the fire station. That's our project. It was completed. That's the Albert Miller complex. Right. And then, of course, I was going to say nothing, but that's what they do. They open those two things. And then, of course, they had the fake band dealing.
Fake band dealing.
That is true. That's true.
You know, I'm still looking for that file.
They say that in OPM.
It disappeared,
What did Grand Bahamians get for the representation?
Nothing. I can tell you.
Nothing. East End.
The farm is not bad.
Nothing.
Nothing.
West End.
Central.
Nothing. Central Grand Bahama. Nothing.
Definitely nothing.
And of course, I can't forget Marco City. Nothing. I'm sure honorable members opposite will be rattling with indignation and points of outrage. But whatever they claim to have done, Madam Speaker, it was not nearly enough. Far too little, far too few. But whatever they claim to have done, Madam Speaker, it was not nearly enough. Far too little for far too few. Unless they want to count the Grand Lucayan Hotel, which the Bahamian people paid hundreds of millions of dollars for, in the end. Anyhow, Madam Speaker, we are 9 months into administration.
Members.
9 months, and today, this is 16th of June, right?
Yeah.
We are 9 months in administration, and there is a visible difference already.
That's right.
There's a visible difference. In 9 months, there's visible difference.
Nancy, none from you.
We are not relying on private interests
Nothing. Zero.
who have failed to deliver for the people for years. We are building a hospital. We are bringing investment. We have secured a world-class plan for the Grand Lucayan. We have inspired a major employer to conduct fairer working practices.
Members,
That's what we did for you all, you know, for Grand Bahama. It's Grand Bahama.
It's just
right? And yes, we have tended to the people who in the previous government was neglected so badly after Hurricane Dorian. How many times did the former Prime Minister even show his face in Grand Bahama until it was election time? Didn't show up to memorials, didn't make visits to offer comfort and hope once the crisis had passed even. But I guess, you know, I think he just didn't like to travel. That's the answer. He didn't like travel. Yeah.
The chair recognizes the honourable member.
There's been much chatter and commentary.
Let us be fair, Madam Speaker. The former Prime Minister made a number of trips to Grand Bahama, to East Grand Bahama, throughout the island of Grand Bahama after the storm. So let's not go down that road.
Thank you, honourable member. Honourable member, you may continue.
You don't get me the phone yet?
Answering how many?
Yeah, he learned. He will learn, eh? Like I say, Madam Speaker, there's been much chatter and commentary from the side opposite regarding government travel and the allocation for travel in the current budget. Let me remind this Honourable House that the estimates for travel are not allocated exclusively for use by politicians. This travel budget includes funding for staff to attend training, to engage in professional development seminars, and to attend conferences on behalf of this country and bring knowledge and better practices home. You are making it believe that money was there just for politicians. Many, and you all know that.
I didn't know this. That's right.
And so, while we embrace modern technology and use of platforms such as Zoom, our recent experience with the learning loss in schools keenly demonstrates that while these modalities are useful, they are still not a substitute for in-person learning. As global travel resumes, we will not hold staff back from expanding their knowledge and development, and hence the lion's share of that allocation is attributed to travel for staff across the public service to do just that. However, Madam Speaker, I find it quite odd that the side opposite objects to the travel of this administration and a 14.9 million allocation, when the same members opposite supported a $23 million travel budget in the 2019-20 supplementary budget. Right? 23 million. We had 14. Our allocation is designed to allow staff to engage in learning and bringing knowledge home.
Transfer of knowledge, important.
Madam Speaker, let's add this. We'll continue to amplify our voice within the region, and around the world on climate change.
Yes, sir.
I know there are those who, suffering from a lack of imagination and indeed a lack of national ambition, believe we are too small to have a consequential impact. That's their problem. We're too small. That's just flat out wrong. There are many forces working against climate change activism. Many powerful interests stand in the way of change. The only way to achieve a renewable energy future is if the countries most impacted by the failure to stand and work together. And that's what they must do. We are also pioneering the use of blue carbon credits, which means that for the first time, the Bahamas will be compensated for the role that our seagrasses play in acting as a carbon sink, extracting carbon from the atmosphere. Achieving a global first is not something you can do while sitting at home. More than half of our country's debt can be traced to hurricanes. When I share this fact, people are shocked. It is shocking and enraging. So yes, standing up for equity in climate financing is important. Our attendance at COP26 in Glasgow last November put us at the forefront of climate change issues. We now have a seat at the table of climate finance ministers, which means that we have a voice in how the global rules are devised. In fact, think about other problems we face, because it's not just climate change. From gun trafficking to illegal migration to global health threats to inflation. What these threats have in common is that they originate outside our borders, not within. Solutions to many of these threats can only come from international cooperation. Our approach is to stand up for the Bahamas and make sure our voice is heard loud and clear in the rooms where decisions are being made. These are difficult times. The global economic picture is very volatile. Supply chain issues and high energy costs are causing prices to rise around the world. Yet, even in times of uncertainty, we can steer our country forward. We can't do it though, sitting at home. This first budget, this first step, establishes a way forward to a more inclusive model for national development, one that is focused on widespread growth and equality. We cannot, Madam Speaker, leave people behind. Madam Speaker, the way forward is together. I thank you.
Thank you.